I'm going to ask on stage, please, Walter Isenberg, CEO of Sage Hospitality, who will be interviewed by Jonathan Falik. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning, Miami Beach. Oh, come on, one more time. Good morning, it's really tough to be on stage in the morning in Miami. Miami's a later night city. Anyone have a good time last night? Okay, people are still waking up. Thank you, Walter, for being here. I'm not going to take a lot of time with random stuff. I want to get right into it. Walter is a legend in the industry. He's extremely humble, but he wears a lot of hats. I think it's one personality, but wears a lot of hats. He's an investor. He's a founder. He runs a very successful and very productive management company. He's built a restaurant management company and creation business. But as important as all of that, right, he's a leader in the industry. He's a mensch. He's a mentor. And if you ask anyone in the industry all over the place, and I do this regularly, and for whatever reason, I traffic with a lot of people who like to badmouth everyone. I've never in 30 years in this industry heard anyone say a bad thing about Walter and only good things. So when people heard I was interviewing him on stage, they're like, I love Walter, I love Walter. This came from employees that he had, colleagues that he had 20 years ago. So Walter, thank you for being here. Maybe start, just tell us how you started in the hospitality industry and what was the trajectory? When did you start Sage, and like what brings us here?
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for those kind words. Appreciate that. So I started, I grew up in Kansas City, and at 14, I was cutting yards, and Kansas City might not be quite as humid as Miami, but the weather wasn't attractive to do that. So I answered an ad in the newspaper, got a job as a dishwasher, and really, from the age of 14, fell in love with the business. And I was fortunate to have a couple of very significant mentors early on. One who was the maitre d' in the dining room at the country club that I started at. His name was Carlos Pena, a Mexican immigrant who did not have a high school diploma, but he wore great suits, and the women loved him. So at 14, I thought I want to be like Carlos. And anyways, he said to me when I was probably about 16 or 17, he said, you really love this business. You need to go to Cornell University. And I had no idea where it was, and ended up meeting through some club members, an alum of Cornell, a gentleman named Phil Pastelli, who's really a legend in Kansas City in the hospitality business, and ultimately ended up at Cornell, which was truly a lucky moment for me. When I was there, I met Zach Newmeyer, who ultimately became my business partner. And in 1984, Zach called me. I was in Houston running a hotel there, and he said, I'm in Denver, I've quit my job, I'm going to start this company. And I went to Denver for the weekend and flew back, quit my job, and we started Sage in 1984. We'll celebrate 40 years in business in March. And it's been a blessing to be in this business. I've loved every minute of it. Obviously some difficult times, but still enjoyed every minute of it. So
Walter, you've been around through different cycles, and you've seen the evolution, right? We obviously have a lot more technology today, right? What's changed in the luxury segment in both operations and financing and asset management? Like, how has it changed from 30 years ago to 20 years ago to today? What's different? What do you see? And maybe after that, I'll ask you if you have any thoughts on where it's going.
Yeah.
Right. But what's happened? What's changed over time?
Well, I think that travel generally has changed. It's become much more accessible to people. If you roll the clock back far enough, airline travel was considered a luxury. Today, I don't think anybody thinks of it as a luxury anymore. Right. But you used to dress up to get on a plane, and
Now the exact opposite
Yeah,
is
oh,
true.
yeah,
The
yeah.
better you
It's-
dress down, the more you fit in.
It's scary seeing people in pajamas in the airport. But so I think travel has changed dramatically, and for the better. It's become much more accessible to a much broader segment of the population. I think that what has changed specifically in luxury travel is that it has gone from the expected to the unexpected. And I say that in that I think about traditional luxury. If you roll the clock back 30 years, everything was very, very formal. We were involved early on in the development of the Ritz-Carlton in Aspen, which is now the St. Regis, and the then president of Ritz was insistent that there would be a dress code in the lobby of the Aspen Ritz-Carlton. You'd have to wear a jacket. And I'm thinking, we're at the base of Aspen Mountain. Like, I'm lugging in my ski boots, and, and the world has changed so much that dress code never got enforced. But imagine, if somebody was standing around in the lobby of a luxury hotel telling people they had to have a jacket or God forbid, a tie. And so I think that, no, it's good. I think you might be the only person at the conference.
I saw two or three.
But the idea of the kind of the expected formality has really been removed from luxury, and it's changed to I think experiences, personalization, and so it's and I think for the better, because we now have I think luxury used to be defined like this, and today it's really much broader.
That makes sense. There are different expectations. Right? I mean, so you said it used to be very formal. I personally wouldn't pay any extra for 3 butlers and, tuxedoed service, but for something that creates either an experience or helps me and is seamless, that saves my time, or introduces me to something that, to your point, I didn't expect, right? I'm willing to pay more for that, right? And it doesn't have to be the fanciest product. It doesn't have to be a $2 million per key build out of a room. It has to be super thoughtful, and the service, right? Again, I don't need to be over-serviced. Right. I need to be serviced sort of the way I want, when I want, and I'll pay way more for that, and I'll enjoy that way more.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. That the idea of this prescriptive, it used to be that when we were training front office associates, we would tell them, okay, here's the script, follow the script, and I think the opposite is true today. We want, and one of the most important jobs I may have had was as a waiter, because you never know who's coming to the table. And if you're going to be successful, you got to read that person and understand, do they want to drink and then be left alone with their spouse? Do they want to order? Do they want to, and you go into restaurants today, and I think that in some places it's a little aggravating. Like, well, let me tell you about the specials. I don't want to hear about the specials. I want a cocktail first, whatever. And so I think training people to be able to read that customer and provide that level of service that customer wants. And some people will want to be more formal. Others will want to be more relaxed and engaging. And I think that's a very complicated thing to train for. In a way, you have to start with the right person. But I think that's an important element of change that's occurred.
Absolutely. I'll tell you a quick story and we'll move on. So probably about 15, maybe 20 years ago, I checked into a Four Seasons hotel in California. I won't say the specific hotel. And the following morning, I had a conference call at 7 a.m. California time. It was 10 o'clock in New York. And I didn't want a breakfast. I just wanted a big pot of black coffee. I was tired. I traveled the day before. So I called for room service, and the phone was answered right away. Hello, Mr. Falik. welcome to this. My name is so-and-so. I'm from so-and-so. I'll be very glad to take your order. I'm like, oh, good morning, thank you. I'd like a large pot of black coffee. They're like, would you like the Green Mountain coffee or the Blue Mountain coffee? I said, whatever you have that's strong, that's going to come quickly in a pot. They're like, would you like a skim milk, a whole milk, an almond milk, an oat milk? I said, I would like a pot of coffee, black, with nothing else and 1 cup. Okay, sir. And would you like an heirloom honey with that, or this kind of sugar, or that kind of sugar? We have brown crystallized sugar. We have raw sugar. I said, I would like a big pot of black coffee. They're like, thank you, sir. Would you like any eggs or fruit? I'm like, maybe later. I would like a big pot of black coffee as quickly as it can come. I'll come pick it up if you like. Oh, thank you, Mr. Falik. Okay, now please allow me to repeat back your order so that, and I'm like, what the hell is going, like, to me, that was not luxury, but someone was working off a script that was designed to create a luxury experience, and it's changed, and our expectations have changed in terms of timing, delivery, and you heard it before, you heard it earlier from Ron, and you heard it yesterday from Raul and from James Birmingham. We're looking for more personalized expectations and service because, for better or worse, we give up so much information, right, about ourselves, and we expect if we're giving the information and sharing it, you're supposed to use that to be helpful, whether that's acknowledging a birthday or whether it's understanding, I want a big pot of black coffee, and I got to get on the phone, with 30 people in 2 minutes, like, I really don't want you to repeat back my order, right? You're probably not going to screw up the pot of black coffee. So, it's changed and evolved, but someone else might be in that room and might be upset if it was a quick phone call, and they would like that. So it's really, really different. So Walter, you run one of the largest in the country, independent hotel management companies. How does that differ in the luxury segment than the branded companies? So we know that Four Seasons is generally, almost never licensing. They're managing on their own. Ritz-Carlton is generally managing on their own. Same with, Montage and Peninsula. To manage as an independent manager in the luxury sector, how does that differ? How do you think about it? How do you staff the business? How do you deal with, how different is it?
I think it's very different. The brands, the luxury brands, again, I think still today tend to be more prescriptive than independents. We do manage the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago. We're the only third-party operator of Ritz in North America. And we've had a great experience there, and I think if you visit that hotel, it does not feel like kind of the old Ritz-Carlton. And I think the luxury brands are recognizing that they need to be differentiated, that they need to have a local connection. But on the independent space, you have a much broader palette, I think, to be creative. And you also are not necessarily confined by what I think some of the traditional thinking is with the brands. And clearly, it's very important. Look, these brands are super powerful. You look at Four Seasons and Ritz as probably the two most prolific luxury brands. They're wildly successful, and they have incredible loyalty amongst their customers. So they've created something that I think is very, very powerful. And yet I think in some respects it's limiting.
Okay. So let's talk about challenges, right? What are the biggest challenges you're facing overall, and especially kind of in the luxury segment? I mean, we went, every 10 years in this industry, we go through sort of the 100-year event, right? That's happened in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. Didn't quite happen in the 2010 decade. We just missed it on each side, right? And then in the 2020s decade, so we have like the once in 100-year kind of issue essentially every 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? What are the biggest challenges that you face today for the company and that you see for the industry, and especially in luxury?
So I think the biggest, maybe the most obvious challenge today is around growth, with interest rates at very high levels, certainly higher than anything we've seen in 15 years. Maybe people should realize it's back to normal. I think the interest rate environment we had in the 10 preceding years was abnormally low. So I think growth, new development, is going to be extraordinarily difficult. Construction costs are very, very high. And so I think that is going to be a big, big challenge. On the operating side, it's people. And I think we have the employment environment is very, very difficult. It is increasingly difficult to attract people who have the experiences and the capability, particularly in the luxury segment. So training and really creating, if you will, the opportunity for people to join the organization and learn and grow is more important than ever. So I think those are probably the elements that I'd say are our biggest challenges.
Do you get college graduates coming out of hospitality programs thinking they're supposed to be a general manager or a C-suite executive like within 12 months?
It depends where you recruit from. My alma mater, if you talk to these kids coming out of Cornell today, they want my job in a few weeks. So we don't recruit there.
Until they get it, then they'd figure out they really don't.
Really? Here you go.
Yeah.
We have aligned with more local, what I would call locally centric colleges and universities. In Denver, there's a University Metropolitan State University. Tuition is $10,000 a year. They have an amazing hospitality program. 75% of the students are first-generation college attendees or students of color. A great opportunity for us to connect with kids coming out of that program. The average graduating age is 26 because they're working to pay for their school. They come out, and if they've got good experience and they can become a front office manager and maybe make $60,000 or $75,000 a year, that is an amazing opportunity for them. And they tend to have the DNA of looking at that opportunity and saying, okay, 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, I want to be a general manager. And I think where you recruit from is critically important to the DNA of the students that you're going to get.
No, after graduate school, I went to work at Bear Stearns in their hotel investment banking business, and Bear Stearns had this historical sort of recruiting idea. They said, we don't really care if you have a Harvard MBA or a Wharton MBA and or a Columbia MBA, and I went to Columbia, so that bothered me a little bit. But they said, we don't really care. That's all nice, right? But what we want is what we call PSDs. PSD stood for poor, smart, determined to be rich. They said, we want people that are hungry. And it was a trading firm originally. That's kind of how they found people. Who's going to run through walls to figure something out, and not think well, if I run through the walls, my $4,000 suit is going to get scuffed up, and my $2,000 shoes might get ruined. So it was a very interesting culture where no one took anything for granted. Yeah. If someone raised their hand and said I belong in a corner office, they would have been just escorted to the elevator to HR and told you got one more shot and then you're out of here. So how big is the portfolio right now?
So we have 62 hotels. We're in 16 states in the District of Columbia, and we have 50 restaurants, bars, entertainment venues, and coffee shops.
So talk a little bit about that. I'll ask you a broader question, like what's the special sauce at Sage? What differentiates you from your competitors? And, along the lines of the conversation we were just having, who's going to succeed? Who's going to succeed at Sage? Like, what are you looking for as people are rising up through their careers and getting to mid and senior positions? But how do you compete in this kind of large industry?
So, first of all, our secret sauce, I always start with our people. We have amazing leaders in our organization. We have very long tenured associates. And so that is, at the end of the day, when you look at everything, you look at, product and experiences and all the things, if you don't have the right people, you're not going to be successful. So secret sauce starts with the people. I think the other thing that we've done is in our space, we're differentiated from our competitors significantly because we're not just an operator, but we're also an owner, which I think is important. As we operate for others, having that owner hat on is critically important. And then we have two companies, Sage Restaurant Concepts, which is an independent restaurant company inside our organization. And that is unique in our space. And we have independent restaurateurs. So we have people that have come from Hillstone and Darden, and there's a James Beard winner in Colorado, Frasca, that Bobby Stuckey. We've got some of his alums, and so we're looking in our restaurant company. We're looking for independent restaurateurs, and that's a very different approach than typical hotels that might be looking for food and beverage directors.
So some of you may not know it, but you've actually eaten in some of Walter's restaurants, because it doesn't say this is the Sage restaurant or this is Walter's Cafe. They run exceptional restaurants that would stand alone outside of any hotel and perform very well in those markets. They just happen to be located in hotels, which is, in my mind, is like a vast change from where the hotel industry was 15 or 20 years ago, where you might have found domestically and internationally the fanciest restaurants in many cases were in hotels, but beyond that, if you went beyond the ultra luxury hotels, you go to a hotel restaurant and it was like pretty crappy.
Yeah.
It was like checking the box. You could have a meal and you probably weren't going to be sick. You wouldn't say, oh, this was the worst dining experience I ever had, but you wouldn't go out of your way to dine there if you weren't staying in that hotel. So they were check the box. And with your restaurant group hiring restaurateurs and people who don't think of it specifically and only from a hotel lens, right, it creates local business. It drives business from other hotels in the market. So like, your Philadelphia hotel, I used to go to the Urban Farmer restaurant all the time because I was the asset manager for the Hilton Penn's Landing.
Yeah.
Also in the Hilton system, and the restaurant at the Hilton Penn's Landing was a good check the box. You could have a so-so hamburger, you could have a fine breakfast, but you would not go out of your way to be there. I specifically went out of my way to be in your Urban Farmer restaurant. Same thing in Portland, Oregon. Same thing in other markets. So, that really, I think, is a big differentiating factor, and not having to outsource all of it.
And we track in our independent restaurants. Our target is to have a minimum of 80% of the customers coming from outside the hotel. And it depends on the asset. But we have an 80-room hotel in Denver, happens to have an Urban Farmer 80-room hotel with a $7 million restaurant. Those are not hotel customers coming to that restaurant. And I think that one of the things that we believe fundamentally, we started our restaurant company about, I guess it's been 18 years or so ago, is that the restaurants and the hotels are both in the hospitality business. But I say that if you break your arm, do you go to the orthopod or the cardiologist? They're both doctors, right? But and I think the restaurant business is truly unique from the hotel business. And so that's philosophically why we started the restaurant company, and I think have had some great success.
So let's talk about, in 2022, luxury ADRs for resort properties drive, not necessarily urban, but resort markets, luxury ADRs went through the roof.
Yeah.
We've seen them slow somewhat as Europe opened up and cruise opened up and people started going back to urban markets and some return to office. What do you think, and we got some opinions last night, I'm curious your opinion, what's the sustainability of luxury ADR? How do we think about it 24 and for the next 5 years or so?
Yeah, so I think there's a big difference between resort and urban, huge difference. So we have luxury resort properties in Savannah and Sonoma, and they both had by far and away their best year ever in 2022. It was through the roof. Our Savannah ADR was, comparing to 2019, it was almost double. I mean, it was just crazy, right? Similar in Sonoma. Their ADRs, frankly, in 2023 flattened out. Very modest growth. And I think we're expecting the same in 24. So if you think about inflation, they're not keeping up with inflation, which is a challenge. But they had such a significant growth that they're still doing very well from a profitability standpoint. Urban, on the other hand, was just clobbered, and we didn't recover in our urban luxury assets to get back to 2019 until 2023. And again, if you think about the inflation, labor and property taxes, insurance, all the things that have impacted the middle of the P&L, the urban luxury properties still have opportunity, and we're expecting, frankly, significant rate growth in 2024. So I think it's a very different picture depending on whether you're thinking about resort or urban in terms of ADR sustainability.
And how much in the urban markets, how much of that is corporate transient versus leisure versus group?
Yeah, corporate transient is still far behind, but it has been supplanted by group. And what we're seeing on the group side, particularly in the luxury, is that the spend, the ancillary spend, is way up. And what we're seeing is that the corporate group is saying, people aren't coming back to the office, but I have to maintain my culture, and so therefore I'm going to have this meeting, and we're going to splurge a little bit. It becomes a lot about reward and recognition, as well as driving culture, and as well as kind of the business focus. So that group has proven to be, I think, the savior, if you will, on the urban side.
One of the things we're seeing throughout our asset management business is there's a lot of small group business that's booking on very short notice. So where they might have booked 6 months out, pre-COVID, now they're booking 30 days out.
Yep.
And in a lot of cases, they're not just hitting their room numbers, right? They're adding on to it as they figure out more people are coming, and they're upgrading on site. They're adding give us another hour of open bar, give us, throw some more shrimp on the display, not in the middle of the event, but right before. And so we're seeing the spend is coming in some cases unexpectedly.
Yep.
Okay, we're almost out of time, so I'm not going to ask you about your own portfolio, right, and favorite hotel, because that's like picking your favorite child, right?
I love all my children.
Exactly, equally. So I'll ask it differently. Outside of your portfolio, what's your favorite luxury hotel in the world?
Well, my wife and I went to the Seychelles for our 35th wedding anniversary and stayed at called North Island. It's a private island. It has 11 villas. it was a life-changing experience. It was amazing. I would then just add that domestically, the Hotel Emma in San Antonio is an incredible asset and amazing service. Great, great people. And so those are.
We'll take it from the expert. Our time is at 0. Thank you, Walter.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.